Great. All right, so welcome everyone. Good afternoon on this MyData versus COVID-19 call. This is our fifth call. So this means that we are meeting for the fifth week in a row on the call with the aim to listen, to learn, and to engage in the human-centric initiative developed to fight coronavirus. Today at the call we have the fourth presentation, and this call is dedicated to the topic of smooth recovery, and we will focus on immunity passports. Immunity passport is a topic as hot as the contact tracing. The government, the institutions, authorities are looking for the ways to allow us to restart our economies, restart our societies, and immunity passports seem to be one of the ways to do it. We will learn about the COVID credentials initiatives. We will also have the demo, Trustee immunity passport, and also at the end, Johannes Ernst will tell us about his project at Assay, which maybe is not directly linked with the immunity passports, but there's a lot to share and also to shout out to the community. Shortly about MyData Global for those who are joining for the very first time. We are the international non-for-profit organization based in Finland but present all around the world, as you see on this map. And we have the members, individual members and the organizational members. We work for the human-centric approach to personal data. We advocate for the people regaining their control over the data about them. And if you would like to join us or to explore if you would like to join, then please go to mydata.org/join. We are the membership-based organization, and your contribution and your support is crucial for our work and for our mission. And with this short introduction, I will now give the floor to our first speaker coming from Finland, Antti Kettunen, who will tell us about the COVID credential initiatives. And before Antti goes, again, for everyone who is joining us, please mute yourself. We are not able to do that centrally, so we have to trust that you will do it on your end. Thank you. Antti, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So hi everyone. I have to say that Jitsi seems to be a lot noisier than a lot of other devices. I can hear constantly how people are joining and disconnecting. So, but that's okay. Not too disturbing. Also, my video is currently jumping around, so let me just see if I can pin the share. So, hi everyone. My name is Antti Kettunen. I work for Every, the largest system integrator IT service provider in the Nordics, and I'm also based in Finland. And I have been doing for the past few years, I have been very active in creating the self-sovereign identity-based world, especially in the Nordics, and we're also creating these self-sovereign identity networks in the Nordics and trying to establish the MyData approach, if you will. I think you can again mute. I'm hearing a lot of background noise here. So what I'm going to be telling you today is a COVID Credentials Initiative, or CCI, and so what this COVID Credential Initiative is. So let's just really briefly go through some major points of there and how can we contribute, and also how do we work together with the MyData initiative. So let's go to the next slide. So COVID Credentials Initiative is essentially a self-organized group. So nobody is leading this. There is already a natural grouping of there's a lot of organizations and people that are working around self-sovereign identity. And so naturally it came about that we felt that there is a lot of digital tools that self-sovereign identity can provide, and they can help to solve some of the issues of this corona crisis. And really, the goal is quite simple, as you can see here. We want to enable return to a normal society with a controlled and measurable privacy-preserving way. So this is definitely nothing. This is not a solution for Corona. We don't see that this is any kind of solution per se, but it is a solution for enabling a sense of normalcy and getting back to the normal routines that we want. So how the CCI movement actually works is that moving forward is that we have self-organized in four different major working groups or streams, if you will. And there's currently, I think, about 70 organizations, even more, I would say, at this moment involved in these groups. So we have hundreds of people involved in various ways. The major groups here, the use cases, rules, tools, and communications. And as I said, that this is a self-organized group, so there's a lot of initial chaos involved and initial kind of just merging of things and everybody trying to find its way and where they want to contribute. I'm personally in the use cases group, and I can tell you most about that group and what's going on in there. But the purpose of the use cases group is really to find out those credential use cases that can be validated by domain experts, and also they can be taken forward and even build part of those tools as tools for any nations or organizations to be taken into use. So we have go-to-market subgroup, we have medical subgroup that is just formed. We have credential strategic segmentation subgroup that I can tell you a bit more, and also this local web of trust subgroup and others. Then we have a rules working group which aims to create this common, usable, very lightweight framework for creating governance and for creating any kind of credential governance. So basically, when you start to exchange these credentials, you need some way to create a legal framework which can be tied into your national legal frameworks, or then just basically what defines the human trust in these credentials. And as a starting point, they've started to use the sovereign governance framework, which is then scaled down for this use case. For tools, there's a lot of variation in tools, and I said that it's still trying to find its way where to focus, but you can see that there's verifiable generic VC constructs, there's overlays, data captures, schema architectures, transient container storages, etc. So a lot of focus groups here. And these will be narrowing down later on once we start to build down on the use cases. So I'm not going to focus too much on these technical issues. And then also we have the communication, internal, external, partnerships, inclusion, etc. And we have been working now on these for a few weeks, so there's some results already happening. And one of those is, for example, the communication websites that you can find. So I think one of the key things here is to understand why we're doing this. So if you take our next slide, many of you have seen this picture. This picture is the so-called hammer and dance. And so why we're doing where the credentials actually can be useful. And I would say that the where it can be useful especially is on the dance phase, because you can see from here, from this diagram, that once we hammer down the initial impact and the infections of the disease or the virus, it's going to be a long time, even months that we need to still restrict gatherings, we need to restrict contact with people so that we don't get second and third waves. Because many times those secondary waves are the more dangerous ones. And if you click on next, the animation, you can see that what's more important even is that we start to do the economical recovery phase. And that is really important because what we're now seeing is that we want to take first the healthcare part so that everybody's healthy or healthy enough and then we start to recover the economy. And that requires that we start to enable things like gatherings, and enable businesses to open up, enable travel to start to rolling again. So for that kind of use, we will need to mitigate every possibility that there is a second wave coming. So that also the next, if we can click on next. So we see that, yeah, there should be one more. Okay, it was the previous one. There should have been one more animation, but okay. But you get the point that that's what we basically need is to start to enable the economy. Now, going into how we work with MyData currently is that we have, for example, here we have Ian Henderson also in this meeting, and we start to see that there are really good joint efforts that we combine our forces, especially regarding the segmentation and MyData Commons work that you guys are doing. And if you consider what are basically segments or strategic segments here, they are a collection of tools, collection of attributes that we're able to prove, which then define what are the segments that we belong in. And if you look at this picture, you must think of this from two directions. When we start to implement credentials or implement any kind of tools, we do two things. One is who can issue what type of credentials. So, for example, we have laboratories, we have healthcare centers, we have employers, or even contact tracing apps that are able to create some kind of credentials and prove something about us. But also, what are the verifiers and what are the questions they need to solve in order to open up their business or let people through, for example, through blockades, or police need to know if you have a key role or key worker status. So from two directions, the verifiers need to define that what is the type of high-level proof that I want, because it's likely that a restaurant owner here does not know anything about the antibodies that need to be checked in order for gain verification or some kind of proof that they are able to give you attendance. So that is the idea here, is that to map out what kind of credentials different businesses need and what kind of credentials different businesses can provide, and then create mapping for rules and possibly even segmentation that resolves these specific use cases. So that's what the work we're doing right now with Ian, and definitely others from MyData community are most welcome to join. And I know that there's a lot of people that are currently part of both communities, so I thoroughly welcome everybody to join the work here as well. So as a call of action, you can go to the last slide. I think that MyData and the fully credentialed initiative can definitely fight this together and join forces, because there's definitely a collaboration opportunity here, and that you guys are working on things that the credential initiative is not able to do, and vice versa. So you can find the links here, fightthevirus.world. That's the landing page for all of the working groups. You can go find the necessary links there. The COVID-19 credentials.com is the website. That's the main communication channel externally. Then the Slack over there, that's the main discussion channel that we have right now. And that's it. So any questions?
Thank you, Antti, for the presentation. We can take now one question, and also now I can also follow the chat. So collecting also the questions. So if there is a question to Antti right now, there is a first just general question. Is there a place where you have published your APIs, etc.?
Yeah, so the API work is currently, well, I don't actually, to be honest, I can't say that there's an API work right now, because you need to check from the technical community. So do we have anybody here from the technical team in CCI who can answer? I would assume that the best answer you can find is that you join the Slack, but there's no published that I know of any API so far.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I see that some people are having problem to connect and are disconnecting, so we are sorry for that. All right. Please share Slack also how it is different from Hindi. Thank you, Lau, for this question and suggestion. We will now move to Jan. I think that this will be a smooth switch from one presentation to the other. I think, Jan, are you now taking over the screen? Yes. So we have now Jan joining us from Sweden with the presentation Save My Grandma Without Losing My Privacy Assay demo. The floor is yours, Jan. Okay, we cannot really hear you.
Is that better?
Yes. But yes, now we can hear you. Yes.
Anyway, to present myself, I'm Jan Lindquist. I'm based in Stockholm. I work with self-sovereign identity implementations to bring basically a privacy agreement using blockchain. And I really appreciate the food you're doing is actually something I'll be demonstrating. So I hope to make it more understandable what is presented through a demo. And basically what I've done is a couple of weeks ago I participated in the crisis in Sweden, a hackathon. I've created a little video demonstrating how we could save my grandma. Basically, there's a little video just demonstrating how it could be implemented. And what I'll do now is present the technical side. So basically, and this is part of SSI. You want to have the freedom of privacy. Your privacy is uppermost in the solution. And so I'm promoting the usage of SSI. Also, at the point that you want to donate your data during this COVID-19, that you have that option, but with a clear understanding of how that data will be shared for use. And there is a condition right now. Governments are allowed for public interest to be collecting data, and they're doing it in aggregate form. But we need a technical solution for it. So I'm going to introduce you three actors in a COVID-19 scenario. We have Alice, which will be our individual that wants to visit her grandma at the elderly care facility. But in order to do that, she needs to connect with the testing facility to create a immunity passport. I'm going to introduce some terms from GDPR, just so to get a little bit more technical so I can demonstrate. Alice is, in GDPR terms, a data subject, while the testing facility who is performing the test is the data controller, and to the right, the elderly care facility, a third party, they want basically a verification that she has the immunity. And in blockchain terms, or SSI, Alice is a holder, the one that holds the certificate once she gets the immunity test, and the testing facility is an issuer, and the elder care facility is a verifier. In order for Alice to get this immunity passport, she needs to first create a connection with them. So what you do is exchange VID pair. So this creates a unique relationship between the holder and Alice, for Alice in the testing facility, without revealing any of their private information like emails and phone numbers and such. Once Alice gets the results of the test, and that the testing facility wants to issue a certificate, basically they exchange a certificate where the issuer signs the certificate, passes it over to Alice, which then she can put it in her own wallet. And what's great with this technology is that the concept of zero knowledge proof. meaning the elder care facility, when she wants to visit them, they set up a relationship through this VID care, but there is no privacy information being exchanged. The only thing they do, and you can do a QR code at the elderly care facility, Alice scans it, it brings up sets up a relation between herself and the verified elderly care facility where they can, the verified can then send a proof request. Do you have immunity or not? And it's an automatic means of just presenting the conditions, and automatically from the holder side it returns with the agreement for the proof that she does have immunity. And this technique keeps the privacy, all the data in Alice's wallet. And it's not only for immunity, it could be location, proximity data, other things you don't want to reveal too much. For the zero knowledge proof, you can then maintain it. And what's underneath, and I'm not going to spend too much time, is that you're using a decentralized registry where we work with these decentralized identities. And it's a permissioned blockchain, so there are stewards managing this network. So for the demonstration, I'm not going to go through all the steps in the demonstration, but there is a Dawn network running your distributed ledger. There is already a connection between the testing facility and also the individual, or Alice in this case. There has already been set up a connection between the testing facility and individual. You need to register, all the issuers need to be registered in the blockchain. You cannot issue credentials without that. So, and now I'm going to demo two parts, very short demo of creating a verifiable credential and also performing a proof request. If everything runs smoothly, you should be able to demonstrate this. So you see there's a connection. The client is Alice, and so the left one is your testing facility, the right one is Alice. So the connection is set up, and the first thing I'm going to do is I came in, I want to issue a credential. I've already defined a schema, and then I want to set in this communication with Alice for the client. I'm going to pick my schema that I want to prove, and I have tested that I have immunity, so I confirm. The doctor sets that up. I set up a credential, which is then passed over. If you look at Alice's wallet, you'll see that there is now a certificate proving that I have basically immunity. So this is now in her wallet. Now I'm going to do a verification. I couldn't create a third agent, so we're going to imagine that this testing facility is also the elderly proof request. So basically, I'm going to, in the communication, to set up the communication, I want to do an immunity verification. And I'm going to basically ask for the immunity attribute. I want to see that you actually have that in place. So this is my proof request, and you should be seeing automatically a response of, yes, I have a proof request. Let's see if I can find it now. It's in the presentation. It's verified to be true that I have an immunity. Here is a proof to the elderly care facility that I have immunity. And so this was a very simple demonstration. Sorry for the short nature. It's a limited time. I know others are going to present. But I wanted to stimulate the forum to consider using SSI in zero knowledge proof. And very briefly, just to expand what kind of schemas the work that Antti is working with. Also, we covered on the immunity test, proximity tests, and also self-quarantine. And at the same time, you're considering the immunity test, you also should be looking at the consent, so the privacy agreement of how the data is being collected. And because of the sensitivity of location data, you also should be looking at performing an assessment to mitigate any risks of data leakage. And this ends my presentation. Sorry, it was very quick. I hope you could grasp the main points of what I presented.
Perfect. Thank you, Jan. So again, is there any question that you would like to ask immediately to Jan? This is now your chance. If not, please keep your, please send your message or question to the chat, and we will pick it up. And now, without further ado, without the delays, we will move to our next presenter, Adrian Gropper, who will tell us about the Trustee immunity passport.
Hi, can you see my slides and hear me?
Hear you very well and see your slides indeed, yes. So please.
Okay. So the Trustee Immunity Passport is an unusual approach to immunity passports because it is based on a patient-controlled health record. It's actually designed over the last 7+ years by doctors and nurses as part of a group that I'm part of. And the thing that makes it unusual is that it is decentralized, and you'll see why that is so valuable in the case of COVID-19. We know why we may need an immunity passport. We don't really talk about who's going to issue yours. You know, labs, possibly, doctors is we're saying, local public health officers, and interested parties like a large employer might also just want to do it as a service for their employees and the local community. So the way we say this is going to work is the way doctors and issue a prescription. There would be a blood test, but right now the blood tests are not very good, and their interpretation can lead to adverse effects like intentional infection, so you can go to work. Also, they'll have to be repeated, so a single blood test might not last effectively very long. In some cases, you want to also swab for active virus. You always want to ask about exposure history, as we all know. And the health records will have risk factors and symptom histories from various acts. And so all of these inputs are subject to interpretation and to being presented in a privacy-preserving or in an appropriate way. So the interpretation part, again, a lab is not designed or licensed usually to provide interpretation. They're only supposed to provide strictly the information related to a sample. So we need these other people to actually sign or issue the credentials.
Okay, for everyone who is
in various ways, depending on people have a phone app or So let me continue, I guess. So it might be a wristband in some cases. Should I tell him what should I do?
No, I think you can continue. I don't know if this is coming from you or if someone is going to mute themselves. So yeah.
No, it's not coming from me.
Carolina, can you unmute everybody except Adrian?
No, unfortunately, that's not possible at this moment. So apologies for that. And again, yeah, please everyone mute yourself. Yeah, Adrian, please continue.
So the point here at the present is that the presentation can be a physical card, It could be a visible wristband in some cases. It can be a beacon that you carry in your pocket, but like some of the contact tracing apps, or that a child carries in their pocket. Because the Trustee approach is not an app, and it's basically a self-sovereign health record, a health record that is controlled by a single patient. That means that all of these presentational options are applicable. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the immunity passport here is being issued as if it was a prescription. It has, and we were obviously set up with our health record to do this already years ago. The role of blockchains here is to hold the issuer accountable. So in other words, the patient doesn't have any need for a blockchain. They might have a need for something like a biometric photograph in their health record in order to keep the thing secure, and the physician signs the health record, signs the immunity passport with a signature being timestamped on the Ethereum blockchain in our case. To do the signature as well as to access the patient records with single sign-on, the clinician would use, or the health officer would use UPort, which we've been doing for about 4 years. And obviously, we're part of the DID community and the verifiable credentials community. And we are going to be doing those as soon as they are stable and available. So, sort of in closing, to leave time for a question or two, the Trustee Immunity Passport is a specific case of the Trustee Health Record, which we've been demonstrating, again, for standards purposes for quite a few years. We now want to sort of convert that reference implementation into a demo of how this can be applied in a decentralized way at the level of a community, maybe a small town, like I say, in some cases just a region, and yet the information can flow up to the nation or up to the WHO. So the call to action, this is my last slide, is to ask people to consider that immunity passports are just a new feature of health records, but not necessarily health records that are held by, say, the government because of obvious privacy-related issues like proximity and social networking and other issues that are important in a pandemic. So if we have the passport itself be a self-sovereign health record, a health record that's controlled by the patient, but allows the authorities, the credentialed physicians, to sign into them and do the equivalent of a prescription, then it all can work out. You don't have this this compromise. So what we're describing is a form of decentralized governance, and please get in touch with us, get in touch with me. I think I'm all over the place, and consider either sponsoring this month-long sprint to actually create a working demo of specific to a passport. And if you're an application developer, either contact tracing or social or symptom reporting applications, check out our GitHub. And start to code according to the standards that we support. And everything, of course, is GPL v3. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. I think the screen got frozen and we saw the same slide, but I have your slides, and if you allow me then to include them to the master deck, then they will be shared with the whole community. And we can now, you have now the opportunity to ask a question to Adrian.
This is Jan, the previous presenter. I have one question. You might have noticed that I've referred you to zero knowledge proof, and great that you're creating the verifiable credentials. using SSI, do you see your platform having the support of the zero knowledge proof? So without revealing any private data, just proving that I have not been to dangerous places with COVID-19, but just doing a verification, a yes or no.
These things will be characterized by whoever the local authority is. In other words, I didn't have time to go into it here, but we use a standard from Cantera called UMA. We were one of the people that converted that to UMA 2.0, that helped drive UMA 2.0 to make it self-sovereign. And so to answer your question, we don't rely on zero knowledge proofs right now. We rely more on giving the individual an automated way of deciding who should see a particular component of their health record. And that decision is made dynamically by the trustee. So the reason it's called a trustee is because it's able to make these decisions. Now, if in the future there are zero knowledge proofs, then the decision of the trustee that's literally working specifically for the patient, the decision of the trustee will be easier because less information is being disclosed, but it is not as essential in a decentralized and completely patient controlled system like ours.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Adrian, if you can stop sharing your screen and we can ask Johannes Ernst joining us from US to tell us about the project app Assay, something that...
It froze my screen, so now I'm going to exit and come back in. Sorry.
All right. Yes, well, maybe that's the way to go at this. I wonder if Johannes, meanwhile, is able to actually take over the screen.
So first,
Johannes?
Yes. Can you? Can you hear me? No.
It's breaking.
Okay.
Now it's good.
Okay. Well, good morning. I'm Johannes Ernst. It's bright and early here in Silicon Valley. This must be important. Usually, I don't even know this time of day exists on the clock. Let me attempt to share my screen here.
Okay, I shared and I stopped, so now I think you are able to do it. Yes, perfect. We see your screen. Okay. Wonderful.
So, Project App Assay is something we started here by the MyData Silicon Valley Hub. Here is the on the slide. There's the co-founders of the hub here, and it is something that we can work on very rapidly. And we also reached out to many of you in the community one-on-one so far. And thank you for all the support we've been getting. This is the first time we talk about it without being just one-on-one. So let me provide the larger context, and before I describe what App Assay actually does, let me describe what the problem is that we solve and for whom we solve that problem. It starts with information technology being used for fighting the virus. We all know that, and pretty much everybody, and as we heard on this call and many other places, everybody seems to be developing technology around it. At the last count, there's certainly hundreds of apps. Perhaps there's already thousands of apps being developed that do something about COVID-19, and it has become rather impossible to figure out which is which. To give an example here, here are some of the features of COVID apps that we have found on the left. And I'm sure by the time I'm finished with this presentation, there will be some other features that apps have, from the attestation of recovery we just talked about, contact tracing that everybody talks about. But there's many, many other kinds of features that various people have implemented for their apps. And as I said, there is literally hundreds, at least perhaps thousands of apps around. That creates a problem. And that creates a problem for three major stakeholder groups for our project, which you can see here in the left column. The general public has the basic question, which app should I use? Should I use this particular app? I've heard about it. What does it do? Is this the best app I should be using? well, why this versus another app? But also, does it have any downsides? If I use this app and it tracks me 24/7, will that, send the immigration authorities after me if you are an undocumented immigrant in the U.S., or will that, identify to the authorities everybody who happens to be part of my persecuted religious minority? Or, there is all sorts of things that could happen in terms of downsides. It's really difficult to tell. The second stakeholder group we have is public health authorities that are under great pressure from the political end to do something related to apps, but it is completely unclear to them what to do. The first question they have is, what do other jurisdictions do? What should be implemented? And then if we go with some proposal from some development group that we have here contacts with, should we just do whatever they say? What are the choices in terms of implementations we should be making them implement? For example, they say we're going to set up this big database in the sky. That's fine, right? Or are there other choices? And public health authorities are not necessarily in the position to understand what the trade-offs are. And finally, app developers themselves are under a lot of pressure to put something out real quick, and they aren't necessarily aware of all the latest algorithms and the latest privacy protecting approaches that there are. And so they have lots of questions around this. And these are our stakeholders here. And it all boils down to what are the implementation choices and which app implements it how. And so these implementation choices have consequences. And of course, in this community here, we know them pretty well. Here are just some of them. For example, if the app that I'm developing is a web-only app, that means certain things in terms of where the data can be stored and who has access to it. If it is mobile-only, then it means something completely different. I think we all understand that. Very few people in the larger stakeholder groups do that. The same thing about identity. We can make it anonymous. That comes with certain pros and cons. It can be pseudonymous. There can be all sorts of different versions around it. In terms of algorithms, in terms of governance, which apps have an actual governance around the data, which ones actually don't. Is the code available for inspection, and so forth and so forth. So these are the choices. And so we came up with the idea of Project App Assay. And for those of you who are not native English speakers, like me, for example, the word assay is a little bit an unusual word. I think it comes originally from and I have a screenshot here to the right, from actually proving to yourself or to your buyer that this piece of metal that you have actually contains gold. It doesn't just look shiny. So if you go to an assayer with your bar of gold and say, tell me what's the percentage of gold that's actually in it, they will do all sorts of things, such as, for example, scrape it or weigh it or x-ray it or even melt it down to see what's really inside that piece of gold, or, as I'm told, also a pharmaceutical. And so we apply the same idea of assaying what is actually in that app on the level of the implementation choices. So that's why it's called Project App Assay for COVID-19. So let me give you a quick, show you a quick way we actually present this information. And I apologize for the website. This is work in progress. As you can see, we can use lots and lots of help here. The website is appassay.org. What we do here is not just collect the apps, because lots of people have done that, but actually dive into them and see in terms of what is actually inside them. So for example, I could go here and say, I'm looking for an app that has certain features. So I come in through the features. And here is a list of features that apps might possibly have, which is very similar to the list that I showed earlier on a slide. And I said, I'm looking for an app that does contact tracing, or something that does something about self-assessment. Or maybe I'm interested in, let's say, a map of the local outbreak. So I click on here and I see, there is one app currently. So we are at the beginning of the project. There will hopefully be lots and lots more apps. So we have only categorized and analyzed a few so far. So here's an app that I have not heard of called WeTrace from the Philippines. So I can find out what that app is. And now it tells me something about it. It tells me what it is, where I find out more. Over here, who is the developer, who is operating it. It's apparently a province in the Philippines. There are some features that this app has, and most importantly, other than the description and some research behind it, here the implementation choices that the app has made. So I can find out, for example, that it is a closed source app. It has an unspecific privacy policy, which doesn't tell anybody. And it uses user pseudonyms that can be resolved to a real-world identity by the system's operator. So I might click on this one and say, hang on, what does this mean exactly? And it shows me here what alternatives there are for this implementation choice, because very clearly these kinds of things can be implemented differently, and we're trying to make this transparent. So if I click on alternatives, it says for user identification, these are the alternatives that we've identified so far that apps might have to implement the same functionality. For example, the user could be anonymous. It could have a single global pseudonym. It may have different pseudonyms in different relationships. The user may be fully known, and there may be other choices over time that we discover as we analyze more features. And so if you look, for example, these are the implementation choices that we currently have found from availability of source code and licensing to what kind of backend there is. For example, the backend might be optional or it may be required, which all has privacy implications and in terms of implications in terms of features. The whole project is set up as an open source project, which means there's a contribute session. We are working with an open source repository that contains the website. And here is our backlog of issues. As you can see, there's about 106 currently open issues. Most of them are actually we have encountered that need to be analyzed. And because this is a very substantial amount of work, a detailed amount of work, we are in the market attempting to raise some funding from public health authorities and from some philanthropic organizations, because that requires a sustained effort. But even now, before we have that, there's already some useful things here on the site. We just created a new channel on the MyData Slack here at Assay. You are welcome to join us there, although nothing has happened there yet. And we would very much like everybody who has an app or has an opinion of any of those apps to tell us about it. Simply file an issue here by clicking on the button here about what your app is, or contribute some analysis if you know something about a particular app or a particular implementation choice. So the idea is that if I am going back to our stakeholders, if I am a user of the general public, or in particular if a public health authority, I can go and say, I need this particular feature. What have other people done? What are my choices? And in the end, develop something better that is better in terms of disease management, but also better in terms of civil liberties and privacy. And that's all I have, and welcome questions.
Thank you so much, Johannes, for sharing your work. I have two questions which can be combined into one from Christian. How does this project integrate into MyData Global? Is it a side project or independent? And when will be the moment that you declare yourself to be successful?
So let me start on the second part. Every morning when you check the news, there's more apps. So as long as this pandemic is going on, and perhaps for some time after that, because we're going to have to prepare for the next one, there will be ongoing application development, new applications, new versions of apps that will do things differently. So this is an ongoing project. It will never be finished, simply because we are tracking the world live as it evolves. And then in terms of how does it relate to everybody else, as many of you know, we've reached out point to point to figure out how exactly to do this best. We are now opening up to contributions from anybody. This is supposed to be a project run out of the MyData Silicon Valley Hub, and the more involvement we can have from the larger MyData community, the better it is.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this, and thank you to all presenters. We have now 11 minutes for the questions and discussion. I wrote on the chat that if you have the questions, you can leave your questions there. I don't see at this moment any open question there. Is someone all right. So there is the so please yeah, you can leave your question or also raise your hand. But there is actually an immediate question from Jan about the analysis of each app. Is it automated, and is there any overview of what's being supported?
So that's a good question. And the short version is that I cannot think of a way of automating this at all. This is something where somebody needs to take an app, download the app, run the app, see how it works, read the documentation, read the protocol specs if they're documented, and also proactively, if necessary, reach out to the application developer, get them on the phone, and ask them some tough questions. There is no practical way of automating, for example, finding out what the practical governance of a backend is in the cloud, unless one does some real human research. So this is a work-intensive project. And then with some certification scheme, that would be a possibility to do down the road. First, going back to our audience, public health authorities today are struggling really hard in having to make decisions on technology they don't quite understand, and that changes every day. And so we want to give them the data in the form that is useful to them. And assuming we can get some funding for this, we will proactively get on the phone and tell them what we know, because they are hurting and they don't have time to figure this out all themselves. The certification is not really at the top of the list there, although it could be done. I should mention, other than having a startup called Indie Computing, I'm also co-founder of a thing called the Me2B Alliance, which is working on certification for certain technology, and that might be an avenue to go here. But that's open at this point.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Is there anyone that wants to ask the question? I see someone on his. Yeah. Okay.
I have a question. This is Frederick. With regards to testing the technical capabilities of the different apps, are you working together with IHE or the Personal Connected Health Alliance and their testing tools?
We currently are just a few guys that volunteer for this thing. So we would love to work with a long list of organizations. In fact, we have a backlog here somewhere. What we need more than anything is people who say, yep, not only should we work together with organization X, but I am the liaison and I help you accomplish, Y for this particular stakeholder today. Because we are under time pressure. So we do what we can as quickly as we can. And that is actionable results for our stakeholders. Whatever collaborations with whatever organizations we can have, the better it is.
Thank you. I'm getting the notification that Christian would like to speak.
Thank you. Actually, I wanted to get that undone because Johannes has just responded to the question.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then I see that Cohen would like to speak. No.
Sorry, I had some issues with I was pressing the wrong button. Sorry.
Right. Okay, so you don't want to speak.
No, thank you.
Thank you. We are all learning all the time. I still give you the opportunity, of course, to ask the question to all presenters. And as this call is called Smooth Recovery, and of course also when it comes to the immunity certificate and the one thing that we know about the use of different apps, it's also the issue of trust. And how do you, maybe this is to all presenters or whoever would like to reply, how do you see the start of using the immunity certificate? How do you feel like that the society that never actually used this kind of application would pick up on that, and what is actually needed to make it something, something popular, something actually working for the society and for safe recovery.
Well,
yeah.
Okay.
This is Adrian. I strongly believe that we need to look at this trust question in a localized way, in the context of both what the prevalence is and what the kind of employment is, and certainly what the institutions are in a local situation, because things like immunity passports and testing and contact tracing work perfectly well within a particular region. There's no need in general to apply national scale governance to them. There is a need with differential privacy and other techniques to feed data to the global level, of course, but that doesn't have to violate privacy because it can be aggregated locally.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Antti, and I would like to second that, but even go more specific. So, how we are looking at things in Finland is that what is not only the local version in Finland, but what is the specific use case we can start with? And it needs to be really simple, really straightforward, but it needs to solve something. And as I said, that it may be that it's something like, for example, how to enable gatherings, how to enable airport travel. Okay, that's actually international, so not that good, but like going to movies or be able to go to ice hockey games. So have very specific use case and implement that. So really, that is a combination of multiple things. It's likely a combination of getting medical professionals like public administration to agree on this, and then targeting highly specific use cases, like in this case, a restaurant or maybe even ice hockey ring or the whole league to enable that. So that is the first thing that I see that should happen. And then the second thing is to take one step at a time to enhance that and scale that into other use cases. So really one step at a time.
Thank you. And I have the notification that Temu would like to speak. Temu Rapponen.
Thanks, and thanks for the presentations. Great to hear them. Yeah, I might have missed something, but I just wanted to be sure on that. So, for example, with contact tracing, there's a lot of, it goes to a very high-level political discussion before anything is rolled out. My understanding is that the immunity passports, that they're not really rolled out on scale anywhere at the moment. And please correct me if I'm wrong. So first of all, that, and then what type of kind of political discussion is happening at the moment? Can you summarize on that? I mean, there have been concerns about discrimination and such. Where's the hotspot to follow on these kind of political discussions and then deployment in practice?
Well, there are certainly examples, starting with China 3 months ago, of national government. Israel, to some extent, has done contact tracing, but China was the original one, and it might still be in place. And the way it was done was totally centrally and totally secretly. In other words, nobody really knew whether their immunity passport QR code was red, yellow, or green for any particular reason. So there have been examples of this in places like that. Singapore, who is it actually? South Korea also introduced something like this for people traveling in.
Thank you, and we are running out of time, but I saw that also Jan had his hand raised. Maybe last comment or question or opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've proven that the technology exists to make a safe way of sharing data. And I think similar to having a highway system in a country, we need a distributed ledger with not one silo not Google, not IBM, or big conglomerates managing the system, but it's distributed, and give a framework where you can develop these apps, you can have schemas to control how data is being shared. So I think that needs to be almost in place in order to do a large scale of SSI. And I'd like to hopefully see it in the near future so that we can develop safe apps. We can validate them as some initiatives. It's very manual, so if we can automate it, I think that we get very far. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone who has joined us. We are at this moment running out of time, and we know that those calls are always seem to be too short. There is also MyData operators thematic group meeting starting exactly at 5 p.m. and many people are dropping to join there. We will change those calls for Thursdays to make sure that everyone can enjoy them, stay with us as long as possible, and we have finally enough time for the meaningful discussion. If you feel that you still would like to talk with the presenters or about the topics that's been discussed today, and you are not yet on our Slack, then you should join mydata.org/Slack, and Corona Data channel is the place to be. So, yes?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the calls will be now bi-weekly.
Yes, and then the calls will be on Thursday, and they will be bi-weekly. Next week, Thursday, that's actually the evening or the May Day Eve. Given the current circumstances, most likely the celebration will not be as big as usual, but we still want to admit that this holiday is taking place, so we will not organize the call on Thursday, the end of the last day of April. The next call will be on 7th of May, on Thursday at 3 o'clock Central European Time. And well, given the current the today's experience with Jitsi, we will evaluate it. We will also ask your opinion on Slack. Do you think it's a good idea to continue with Jitsi, or what's the best way to proceed? For now, I would like to thank you all for being here. Thank you to all four presenters for providing us with the update and again giving us all hope that things will be good and this recovery and getting out from the crisis will be smooth. And I wish you all a very nice Wednesday afternoon. Please stay healthy and safe, and join us on Slack and then latest on the call on 7th of May, which is in 2 weeks. We will surely miss you. So thank you all for the recap will be traditionally on the Corona Data. The call was recorded and will be available for you and also for all those colleagues who for some reason couldn't join. So thank you. Goodbye.